Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. I am John Schmelk. Unfortunately, we are snowed in New York City, in New Jersey. We hope to get out to the Combine shortly, but we have managed to finagle things with some help from our guys here. Big shout out to Charles Erdman for helping us here. Big shout out to Matt Stopsky for helping us out in Indianapolis. So we're still going to try to do some of those interviews. All right, and now we welcome in from the Combine in Indianapolis, the excellent draft analyst for NFL Network, Daniel Jeremiah. DJ, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I wish you were here, but sounds like the effort is there, and eventually we get you out here.
Yeah, we should be arriving shortly. We appreciate you doing this over Zoom for us. So, Giants picking fifth again. Unfortunately, every time I talk to you, I feel like the Giants have a top 5, top 10 pick. And is it fair to me to say this maybe unlike last year when, Malik Neighbors, or 2 years ago when Malik Neighbors gets to the Giants, they got Abdul Carter 3 last year. You're probably not going to be talking about the same graded level of players in this year's draft class?
Yeah, I think that's a safe assumption. I think there's really, really good players and impact players, but that was a different echelon, with those guys. So you got a chance to get somebody that's going to really, really help you. And some years you're going to have years where you get these marquee premier guys. We just, this draft just doesn't have that.
Yeah, and the top guys are safeties and running backs and off-ball linebackers and converted off-ball linebackers to edge players. It's just a very different type of draft.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think there's some guesswork there this year in terms of just, filling in some of the cracks on some of these players. And there's no perfect prospect ever, but this year kind of accentuates that. You got guys with real strengths, and you got to figure out what you want and what you're looking for. I do think they can find winning player here that can really help them. It's a new era with John Harbaugh there. And I think they want somebody to come in and make an impact and help this team get back on track. I think there's some good options.
So let's put needs aside, DJ. Let's just talk about the players here, because I think if you look at John Harbaugh's history with the Ravens, they like to just sit there, wait for the best player to fall to them, and then you pick them, right? Whether it's Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Linderbaum, whoever it might be. So when you just look at your grades and you recently released your top 50, I thought it was interesting that you had both Styles and Delane ahead of Caleb Downs. How did you sort through that type of group of players and how you kind of stack them in your top 10?
Yeah, to me, it was, a couple different things. Number one is just pure impact. I like Caleb Downs a lot as a player. He's a really, really sound, solid football player. I think with the leadership aspect of it, the intelligence stuff, there's a lot of value he provides that doesn't necessarily show up on the tape. But to me, when I'm picking up there in the top 5, I just want impact. And when you watch Sonny Styles against Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, he's the best player on the field in that game. He's all over the field, dynamic. He's got rare size, length, speed, explosiveness for that position. So you're getting big-time impact there with him. Mansoor Delane, I think, has got a chance to be a number 1 corner. So that's a premier position and a guy who plays it at a very, very high level. And then you get Downs, who's, kind of playing in the box. He's a really, he's a good tackler. He's a good run-read player. I don't know that you're going to, let him loose and mirror slot receivers all over the field. And then playing high, he's a good player back there, but not quite as dynamic as, some other guys we've seen. So, again, it's a difference between just being a really, really good, solid player and then guys have a little more elite traits and a little more impact you provide.
All right, I want to hit each of those guys one by one, then we'll hit the wide receivers. In terms of, let's start with Downs. I thought around the line of scrimmage, his instincts as a run defender were fantastic. I even thought in some ways they were better than Styles, which is saying something. Styles is like my 5th player. I think he's fantastic. But I thought he was great near the line of scrimmage. But it's funny, and I think you put this in your little caption in your top 50. There aren't just that many reps where he's playing deep and guys are throwing at him. So it's hard for me to get a feel for how he's going to play that role if he gets put in there in the National Football League.
Yeah, no, that's part of the evaluation. And I don't know how much he's going to do through the workout process. Going forward, he's, widely viewed as a top 10 pick. And sometimes those guys don't go through the whole process. So that would be unfortunate because I'd like to see him move around and see how he would do in that regard. The one thing about him is the character stuff and the off the field intangibles with Downs. It is legit, to the point where I talked to one of his former teammates at Alabama and I said, hey, tell me something about Downs that I don't know. And he goes, well, he said, he signed, going into, during the spring of his senior year of high school. So he's a high school kid coming in there. they've got a bowl game. So they're doing bowl game prep. He's not even enrolled in the school yet because he hasn't even started the spring semester. He's obviously not eligible to play in the game. He's like, I was sitting next to him on the bus, and we were leaving practice on the way back to the hotel, and he's got the defensive game plan out, and he's studying it from the entire bus ride. I didn't say a word. He's sitting there studying for a game he's not even eligible to play in. So he's the wiring stuff on him is legit.
Huddle up, get in here. If you're lined up here, you gotta go over the middle with it to score.
Right. How do we make that happen?
I don't know, but Citizens does. Make sense of your money with Citizens, official bank of Eli Manning.
Looking for more than just a ticket? Elevate Experiences delivers VIP access to the world's biggest events, from the Super Bowl to NASCAR to PGA Tour tournaments. Don't just attend, elevate the experience at elevateexperiences.com. I'm trying not to fall into the same trap I fell into with Kyle Hamilton, because I sat right where you're sitting now a few years ago, and I'm sitting there, you know what? I just don't think Kyle Hamilton can cover, slot wide receivers in the slot. And if my safety can't cover a slot wide receiver, why am I picking him in the top 10? And maybe I'm overcompensating here, but I'm just trying not to fall into that same trap again. I know Hamilton's a lot bigger and all longer, things like that, but I'm just trying not to fall into that, rely on traits on safeties when so much of what the safety position is what's going on up here.
Yeah, I would say the difference, though, is that Kyle Hamilton was bigger, and I think Kyle Hamilton had more splash plays, more impact plays.
That's fair.
And the way I would, get to it is I, go through this whole process. I'd already watched Downs, and I had done Styles, and I'd done Arvell Reese. But as I was going through other players that were in that conference or that were on their schedule when I was watching games, I just remember I had to go back and watch Igbinosun, the corner. So I'd watched him separately from those guys. So I'm going through all the corners, and I watch Igbinosun, and I'm going through 3 games on him. And I'm like, whoa, there's Styles. Okay, and I'm watching Igbinosun. I'm like, oh, gosh, look what Arvell Reese just did. And then I kind of got through 4 games, whatever it was, and I was like, gosh, I didn't notice Downs, as much. And that's not saying he's not playing well. It's just that there wasn't as much impact as you saw with those guys. So that's kind of what I come back to.
No, I think that's fair. All right, Sonny Styles, really smart player, and man, he can run. The one thing I'd say that when I watched him, DJ, and I was not concerned, but it was surprised me. I thought there'd be more tackles behind the line of scrimmage. Like, he's really good at knowing where to go, fill in the hole, but I feel like he didn't trigger quite as quickly to get into the backfield. Maybe that's a scheme thing where they're asking the linebackers not to get upfield, more to kind of fill the hole. But I'm just curious what you thought about that aspect of his game. I thought he was willing to take on blockers, but I just didn't think there was many tackles for losses on tape as I thought there would be when I started it.
Yeah, part of that is when you've got a really talented defensive line like they have in front of them, you don't get as many opportunities to clean up a mess that's already been cleaned up. So there's some of that. But he uses his hands. When he plays downhill, he can get off blocks. He's got length. He uses it. He'll scrape over the top and make plays sideline to sideline. So, there's some of that. Some guys aren't given the freedom, and that's something you can talk to him about when you get a chance to visit with him, to really shoot gaps and go. But, the way it's played a lot right now in the NFL is it's more of it's a shell, it's a structure.
Yep.
It's so focused on eliminating big plays. And I'm sure with Patricia, with his NFL background there, it was, hey, I'm not going to let you play with the ultimate freedom where you're going to vacate and leave us vulnerable here. We're going to kind of create more of a wall front. So, and maybe that isn't true. Maybe he's just late triggering, but that's something that, you got to get a little deeper on when you get a chance to visit with him.
Yeah, that's honestly what I thought might have been the case, because I didn't see any of the linebackers really flying in there or anything like that. So I'm with you. If there's one concern you have about Styles watching him, is there a concern, or do you think he's a really, really safe player?
I think he's a pretty safe player. I didn't notate real issues with instincts or his eyes not working. I thought he was fine there. I've got someone who, if you need to run down the seam with a number 2 receiver, he's got enough juice and speed to be able to do that. And he's, as a former safety, knows how to play the ball. So yeah, he's my 5th overall player, I think, right around there, 4th, 5th, 6th, somewhere in that range. For an off the ball linebacker, that's a pretty high range.
Would we be talking about Arvell Reese as a top 5 pick if Micah Parsons didn't happen 5 or 6 years ago?
It's interesting. There's been a lot of guys now that have kind of come through that lineage of, kind of these hybrid players.
Yep.
I think once he got through the testing phase, he still might have vaulted himself up into that discussion, but it definitely helps to have a proof of concept of guys who've made this transition full-time off the edge. So I think that's fair. I think he would have been a top 15 pick, 10 years ago, but maybe, at this point in time, this vaults him up a little bit higher.
Man, let me tell you, though, he is a great off-ball linebacker. His ability to use his length and separate and get off blocks, and whether it's, on the edge or whether it's, behind the line of scrimmage and an off-ball guy, he is an elite off-ball linebacker today. Like, you could put him in as an off-ball linebacker, and I'm fine starting him in year one. He's fantastic.
Yeah, and talk about just two imposing guys with him and Styles. Like, they'll be the first ones out for warm-ups, I can tell you that much, because they are both so long and rangy, and I mean, that's what you want guys to look like physically at the next level. And I'm with you. I mean, you could absolutely use him there and plug and play him, and he'll be a really, really good off the ball linebacker. I think the word, if we were getting paid by the times I've used this word, you'd be very wealthy. But I think you get more impact with him, letting him rush.
No, Doug, I'm with you. And look, I especially on late downs, on passing downs, you want to use him in that spot. And he has to develop some pass rush moves, but I'm with you. Yeah. He can do it. All right, the wide receivers, Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate. Separate them from me the way you think about him. Tate's my number one guy. I'm still not sure, DJ, to be honest with you, if he's going to be like a quote-unquote high-end number one in the NFL in that Neighbors level. Yeah. But I do think he complements what Malik Neighbors does really well with his verticality, his length, his body control, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the scouting report. And I have the same exact grade on him and Lemon. They're totally different players in terms of how you use them. Lemon's going to be a high volume slot receiver who can play outside if you need him to, but the impact for him is in the slot. Let him, catch 110 balls there. I think that's a little bit more, from a skill set standpoint. He's not as dynamic or as explosive as Neighbors, but he's in that family of wide receiver. Whereas Tate gives you something a little different with the big frame, the body type, someone who can really, really play over the top of coverage. So I don't think you're going to get the same number of catches with him, but you can get someone who's going to average 18 yards a catch and who's going to be a point scorer when you get down there in the red zone.
If you want to know how to manage 2 minutes of crunch time football, I'm your man. But if you're wondering about a long-term financial plan, you should talk to Citizens. Hey, I can also talk lawn care.
I'd like to learn about a mowing routine.
Yes, I knew I could help. Make sense of your money with Citizens.
Giants Huddle Podcast is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day celebrations to your everyday financial needs, Big Blue fans get the most out of every moment with Citizens. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. And by the way, and we talk about all these guys, and I think all these Ohio State players are safe players. It's amazing. Yeah. We're talking about Giants. We're talking about 4 Ohio State players already. It's amazing they didn't win the national championship.
But there's a takeaway there. There's an absolute takeaway. They have 4 of my top 10 players in the draft from Ohio State. They didn't win the Big Ten. They didn't win the national championship. Why? Because they couldn't block.
Yep.
They couldn't block. They couldn't block Miami. They couldn't block Indiana. So if you ever wonder about, here's the other thing. Everybody always wants offensive linemen during the season when they're watching their team play. And then something miraculously happens. The season ends and we got to get receivers. And I want this. I'm like, well, what about all these offensive linemen you said we needed during the regular season? And the teams that go through the whole tournament end up being pretty good along the offensive line. But it's not as fun to talk about once you get the season over with.
What do you think it takes run after catch ability?
Good, not great. I think to me, his value is more, again, getting on top of everything. I think run after catch, there's other guys. I mean, I think I would put Lemon ahead of him in terms of what he can do strength-wise. Omar Cooper would be ahead of him in that regard. Tyson's a little more elusive than him. That's not really what you're buying with him on the run after catch, but he is someone who's going to win on a slant with his size, someone who's going to get some home runs over the top. And again, to me, in the red zone, the funny thing is when you catch the ball in the end zone, you don't have to run anymore.
It helps. All right, you mentioned blocking, and I think offensive line would be the other spot that the Giants might think about going there. And you look at Maui Noah and Fano. As the team that drafted Andrew Thomas, 6-7 years ago now, I would not put those guys in that class. Maui Noah, the way he moves, I think he played great at tackle. He just looks like he moves like a guard to me. Is 5 too high for those guys, or is in this draft class that a decent spot to select one of those guys?
It's a little bit early for me. I think I have him in the 12, 15 range, like in this draft class. But, I mean, I'm anxious to see them move around in person because I didn't have official measurables on either one. you hear from people that have gone in there, like I thought Maui Noah was 315, 320. Then I find out he actually played like 345 with less than
Wow.
20% body fat. Like he is a big man. And then on Fanu, it's like, well, what do you see him? He's a little narrow and his length is not, where it needs to be. He's just not a big guy. Well, that's just what I've heard. I haven't got a chance to eyeball these guys. So I'm anxious to get official measurements here in Indianapolis. I'm anxious to see these guys move around a little bit. The tape's pretty good. I mean, I think both of them you have, and people don't want to hear this, but you have an opportunity with those guys that there's a high floor because either one of them failed to guard and you end up with with an outstanding guard, which is not ideal, but I don't think you're going to miss on either one of these guys.
All right, and now I'll go to Mansoor Delane, because I think he's the last guy that's an option here. What would be your concern with Delane, if you have one? Is it the length? Is it how fast he's going to run? Because his tape was phenomenal. Like, his tape was great. No one got open against him. And that's, if you want a corner, no one gets open. I think that's a pretty good thing, right? So if you had a concern about Delane and picking him in the top 5, what would it be?
My concern would have initially been just top end speed. But I've talked to the folks where he's been training, and they are very confident he will run the low 4.4s, and they said speed is not an issue for him. Sometimes guys that are just so natural and so smooth and so instinctive like he is, it almost looks like he's on cruise control. And then, to be honest with you, he didn't get challenged very much as the season wore on. People just stopped throwing at him because you couldn't slip pieces of paper between him and wide receivers. He was in such snug coverage. So I think his tape's really, really good. And I think he's almost someone that you can get in trouble by getting bored watching him, because he just does it down after down after down. And there's maybe not those crazy, wow, splashy plays with him, but that's more so, out of his control. They just stop going at him.
No question. All right. Giants pick at 37, DJ. Give me a guy that maybe is your pet cat, one of your favorites that, maybe will get there to 37. Other people might not like it as much as you do, but you think will be really good value for the Giants at the top of the second round.
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways you could go. I've been a Malachi Fields fan. I've been a little bit higher on him than others at Notre Dame, and I think he would give them some of that size and physicality to complement what you have there in Neighbors. So, we'll see. I think he could, if he works out well, runs well, he could run his way into the late first round, but I would love that value in the second.
So if the Giants are sitting there in 5, final question, and you're staring at Styles, Downs, Tate, Delane, let's say all 4 there. Probably not going to happen. Let's say all 4 there. What direction would you go if you're the Giants?
Styles, Downs, Tate, Delane.
Yes.
I would take Styles. Yeah, I would take Styles. I know it's an off-the-ball linebacker. I don't care. This guy is going to be an absolute warrior in the middle of your defense for a very long time.
DJ, enjoy the rest of the combine, my friend. You got a lot more of these to do. We appreciate you stopping by, and hopefully we'll see you in Indy tomorrow.
I appreciate it. Travel safe, man.
We thank Daniel Jeremiah for joining us. You can check out NFL Network's coverage of the Combine all week long on NFL Network. DJ's awesome. We always thank him and the great folks at NFL Network for making him available to us during the week in Indy. All right, that's it for this edition of the Giants Huddle Podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. I'm in the Hackensack Marina Hill Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. For Daniel Jeremiah, I'm John Schmelk. We'll see you next time, everybody.